Fellows of the American Institute of Architects, recognizing not only his contributions to the profession, but the excellent body of work that he has already amassed. He's been involved in work on the light rail and transit-oriented developments for quite some time. He was one of the early collaborating design professionals envisioning what our transit system would look like, and his fine and adept design hand was involved in the light rail station canopy design, which we are now enjoying the foliage filling in all over town. And most recently, his firm has finished the design, construction, and commissioning of the Tempe Transportation Center, which truly embraces all the promise potential that is in transit-oriented development. So, John, we'll give it to you.
All right, I know what my beagles feel like. They have to sit still for a while, and then they're on a leash. Now I'm going to try to do this. Yeah, what I'd like to do is talk about the Transportation Center from a couple different points of view. This is a little different than the projects we've seen before in that this is done by the public sector, and it's supporting the walkable communities that we're trying to create. So it's approached a little different. It's a 100-year plus type building, so we're looking at upfront costs that are a little different, but thinking about the life cycle costs of the project in a lot different ways. The first things that we look at on these projects is beyond the site, thinking about the distances, the walkability, what's around it to support it. The first thing that was really interesting about this is that we don't have any parking on the site. The site's not big enough for parking. We have 2 spaces for ADA accessibility, and then the rest of it's in a, I don't think I've got any kind of laser pointer, but just below the green to the left is a public parking facility that was coming online about the same time. So those things are important, and then the adjacencies to ASU, downtown. So the location that the city chose for this site was actually very strategic, and the light rail stop that was serving those locations. The building is situated at the base of Hayden Butte, which required a completely different sensibilities, as well as some of the challenges with Native American sacredness of the Butte in terms of how we place the building. We spent a lot of time in the public realm talking about these issues. Excuse me. And that led to a lot of the design opportunities and what the building finally looks like. So here's the site. We're adjacent to the police station. Part of the strategy was to completely relocate the Sallyport entrance, which was actually over on the right side of the site. Relocating that, as well as getting all the buses on the site, turning it around. And then down below is a section that we're basically at the base of Hayden Butte and literally having to create a site that's completely universal in design. So thinking about accessibility without ramps. We didn't want a lot of handrails and everything else, so there was a very complicated site grading problem that we had to reconcile. This was a collaboration with OTAC out of Lake Oswego. They're really known for their transit centers, and were very instrumental in making this a successful project. So the big theme or the big idea was to basically put the prosthetic of the Hayden Butte back on. So it was literally lopped off before in the past. This was like this crazy little parking lot for the police department, asphalt. Below it was this amazing archaeological site that kind of wreaked a little bit of havoc on our schedule and budget, but it was really important that the city did that right before we move forward. It's a mixed-use project, but in a slightly different way. So we've got on the ground floor, we've got leasable space, we've got the tickets for the operations, as well as a bike station. And it's meant to work and feed off of the plaza. The idea of the interface of the retail in the plaza, we took a lot of time and consideration of how the building hits the street, and the idea that when we have these amazing months that are about ready to leave us, but we can open up the doors. Spent a lot of time thinking of how we can let things flow inside and out. We're in the process right now, hopefully, of filling the retail spaces with some really interesting programs that are coming along. Second floor, we've got city transportation offices, and then also the community room that we pulled outside of the building to become basically the gem for the project. The idea of a sustainable building in the desert is made up of a lot of ideas in a building that hopefully we start building buildings that last hundreds of years versus 50 years. And when we think of that way, we invest a little more up front. So the idea of future-proofing buildings so that we're not taking the walls and throwing them into landfill when we know we're going to be remodeling those over time leads to a variety of different strategies. So we're using the dirt wall, flexible wall system here. We're using a modular furniture system and a modular raised floor. These not only help in flexibility, but there's also some other benefits that I'm going to talk about here in a sec. In the community room, we pulled that out, the idea that can the building literally operate without air conditioning certain times of the year? There's no reason why we have to have hermetically sealed buildings anymore. The more interactive or the more sustainable the building is, the more we have to get out of our desks and adjust the building to meet our needs. And this building is chock full of those kinds of strategies and ideas. This actual community room, we can open up the north and south walls completely, allow it to naturally ventilate. And everybody really enjoys having meetings in this space when the weather permits. Third floor is for lease office and the traffic management center. So you can see the variety of uses and functions that are kind of plugged into it. This is the lease space ready to go, raised floor system, and the looking out to the east. The lights aren't supposed to be on, by the way. The photographers always leave the lights on. We don't need them during the day at all on this project. The guys that are watching us on those little cameras around the freeways and stuff and on the streets, these are the guys at the Transit Operations Center. They got these really cool big screen TV. So a desert urban building is unique in terms of how we would approach it. And thinking about the sun and the elevations as a starting point yields 4 completely different elevations based on the orientation. The solar consequences that we're dealing with yield different ideas, as well as the programs that are internalized and also the adjacencies. In an urban project, it's not like the old days where these were objects sitting out in the middle of the landscape. There's always something adjacent that we need to respond and deal with. In one case, we had a police station that the police were very critical about not having anybody be able to basically fire upon them. They didn't want a building with glass overlooking them, so that kind of set up the core. We had to orient the building basically the wrong way. So usually we want our long surfaces on facing north and south, but because of the sacred nature of the butte, we had to rotate it the other way, which required a completely different solar strategy. So the building takes on a very sculptural, unique approach. The aesthetics are all derived from actional, functional, rational responses to climate, program, or function. So the first thing we did was take that core, the building core, which has the restrooms, mechanical issues, the storage, put that on the west side and let that be our first buffer. We actually created a very inexpensive CMU or concrete block, self-shading skin, if you will, that helps mitigate that heat to keep that, because that's always our worst, as you know, the west is the worst orientation for a building in terms of our energy footprint. And yields a really interesting, fun